Christopher Nolan has released 13 movies now, and I'm going to stop and rank them today. Tell me what your ranking is down in the comments below, and be aware that this will contain some potential spoilers for these movies. If you haven't seen them and don't want to be spoiled, well, when I talk about them, you might want to skip over to the next section. And with that said, let's get started. Coming in last is Following. Now, to be quite honest with you guys, none of these movies on this list are bad movies. Even last place with Following, it is not a bad movie. This was Christopher Nolan's first movie. Most people refer to it as kind of like a demo test of what Nolan is capable of, because this has the non-linear storytelling that he's famous for. It has, you know, these different types of camera angles and stuff like that. It is a movie that kind of shows that he has the storytelling talent, he has the craft, he has the stuff that he needs to provide a excellent cinematic experience. He just lacks the equipment and the overall materials to do so. And with this movie, it's quite simple. A guy is following someone. He picks out different people every day out of a crowd, just wants to see where they're going, whether they're going to work or home. He just wants to see what they're doing in their life. And that is pretty fascinating. He meets this guy that ends up being a guy that breaks into apartments and commits robberies, and he kind of gets infatuated with this guy. It's definitely like a hint of like obsession in there, where this guy gets so infatuated with this guy's life and how he steals and how, you know, the thrill of, you know, potentially getting caught and trying to get in and out without getting seen, without getting caught, and it just spirals out of control. Each character in the movie, there is layers to them that are revealed throughout the story that makes you recontextualize everything that you saw about that character up until that point. It's just a really fascinating watch. Nothing that I would really revisit. I don't see myself watching this one as much as the other movies on the list, but for a first film, Christopher Nolan proved that he had what it took. He just lacked the materials to give us an even better movie. Coming in at number 12 is Tenet, and this is a movie that over time has fallen down my ranking, not because of anything overly bad about the movie. I think that at its core, it is still a very good movie. It is just that throughout my watches of this film, I have yet to be fully on board with what's happening, because the movie is unnecessarily confusing. It feels super convoluted. It isn't interested in explaining itself too much. It does, you know, try to do some explaining about, you know, what we're trying to stop, what this means for the world if this gets out, but it doesn't really end up coming together as a full explanation of, like, why what we're witnessing is happening. Even in the very beginning of the movie, we're thrown into this random mission. We meet the protagonist. We don't really get to know anything about him. He is just called the protagonist. John David Washington does a great job. You've got Robert Pattinson in here, Kenneth Branagh, Elizabeth Debicki, Hamish Patel, Aaron Taylor Johnson even shows up for a bit. And it's got a great cast. It's got all of the Nolan-isms that you want with the cast, with the action, with the practical hand-to-hand fight sequences, you know, fighting in backwards. The actors actually had to learn how to move and fight in reverse. The vehicle sequences, the car chase on the highway, with the cars flipping over and going backwards and all of that. All of that's fascinating. Going, you know, through the rooms, fighting, you know, people, and, you know, having that sequence where the protagonist goes out and you realize that he was a part of that highway sequence already. He was there in the past and in the future at the same fucking time, and it all gets so confusing. Even me explaining it is giving myself a fucking headache. But look, visually awesome, the action's cool, it is very, you know, just fucking fascinating to watch, you know, cars flip over and then go back to normal and drive perfectly. And even in that sequence when the protagonist crashes his car and they light him on fire, it's revealed that works in reverse, where, you know, instead of, you know, being on fire, he was actually cold. It's just little stuff like that I really enjoyed. The realization of what happens to Robert Pattinson's character in the end, also something deeply fascinating to me. But the movie just doesn't have enough explanation to really justify me putting it any higher on the list, because any of these movies above it, I have a better time following it, and I can easily tell you at least one or two of the ideas that Nolan is trying to get across. But this movie, all I can tell you is Nolan, I respect it. I respect the action, the choreography, all the practical stuff, fucking crashing a real plane into that airport is badass, but on a story level, it just simply confused me too much. You can't think about it a whole lot, but I just end up thinking about it a whole lot. So I was a bit confused. That's where I stand on that. Number 11 is The Prestige, and this is a movie that a lot of people are going to have way higher on their list. I have seen people have this in their top 10s, in their top 5s, and the movie simply has one standing out issue that makes it, that makes it miss the top 10. And that's because the characters. Angier, Borden, they are just two very despicable, unlikable guys that I know that's the point of the movie, but it makes it really hard for me to invest in their goals, really care about anything that happens to them, care about the twists that happen, care about the fate of one of our characters in the end. And it's a movie that challenges you because you are trying to figure out how one of these guys is pulling off this magic trick while the other one is pulling, his hair out, trying to realize what the fuck's going on with this trick. They're both eager for greatness. They want, their names up in lights. They want audiences filling the auditoriums, watching their shows. They're both obsessed. There's another theme of obsession in this movie, with fame and greatness. They want to be at the tippy top of their game, but at their core, they also have just a deep-rooted rivalry because of their past, where, his wife drowned in the beginning, and Borden, didn't tie the knots correctly, and you have a whole ordeal with that. And Michael Caine is in the movie, brilliant in this film, probably one of his best Nolan outings, I would say maybe his best, actually, outside of his work as Alfred. And, Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, like I said, despicable characters, but they play them really well. Scarlett Johansson isn't given a lot to do in this. I felt like her character was kind of, surface level, didn't really have a lot of depth to her. I wanted a little bit more out of her character, but the sci-fi elements, the actual reveal of the trick being that they're using teleportation, or cloning, sorry, thanks to Nikola Tesla, that was all pretty fascinating. The movie moves at a pretty steady pace. I didn't really find myself dragging in any areas, because I was invested in the rivalry, just not their individual journey, so it made me hard to care about, either one of them or their fate. So that's why it comes in this low on the list. I still think it's a very good movie, one that I would recommend. It's just not one of my personal favorites. Kicking off the top 10 is The Dark Knight Rises, and boy, this movie really capped off the trilogy in a swell way. I can definitely see some people complaining about why, Bruce chooses to ultimately leave Gotham and live his own life somewhere else. Why wouldn't he keep being that protector for the city? But Bruce gets his ass kicked in this movie quite a lot. We open the film, he's been retired for years because of the whole controversy with Harvey Dent. People think that Batman killed him, and he's walking with a cane, and until he gets like a magic leg brace. It's just, there's some weird cutting corners in this movie that doesn't quite make sense to me. But like, he gets out of retirement, becomes Batman again, but then Bane fights him, breaks his back, and then he's out of the game again. And then all of a sudden they do this kind of weird therapeutic shit, and they lift him up and they unbreak his back, they fix him, and they put him back into the suit. He's Batman again. So he both becomes Batman, loses it, and then becomes Batman again in the same film. It felt a little bit unnecessary to me in that regard. But Tom Hardy as Bane, unforgettable performance. Those lines that he was firing off were really hitting. You think darkness is your ally, but I was born in the darkness, bred by it. I love that. I love Tom Hardy in this film. Anne Hathaway as Catwoman is really good as well. Christian Bale, closing out this trilogy as the character. You can tell that he has a lot of love and respect for the character. He treated his arc with as much dignity as you can give him, despite the cutting corners of, his injuries and stuff like that I found to be a little bit ridiculous. But that ending, man, Michael Caine sitting across from him, giving him that nod, iconic for sure. The fight sequences, not as impactful to me as Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, but still really great. It's a nice capper to the trilogy, and it just has a few problems holding it back for me from putting it any higher. Number 9 is going to be a controversial pick as well, Inception. Now, this movie has some incredible visuals. It is a heist movie, but it's not just as simple as that because they are pulling heists in people's dreams. They are stealing from people's dreams. They are entering their minds. It has a stacked cast with Leonardo DiCaprio, Cillian Murphy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Oh my god, dude, there's so many fucking people in this movie. Cillian Murphy. I'm struggling to think of all of them, but Inception is a very mind-bending movie. You know, not as much as Tenet. I can follow Inception a little bit better than Tenet. But there is still some very complicated elements about Inception that kind of hold me at arm's length from it, that really holds me from connecting with it as much as I want to. I did connect with Leonardo DiCaprio's character, his journey in the movie, his arc I found to be really awesome, probably the standout part of the movie outside of the, incredible visuals from the dream escapes that they're in, all the stuff flying around, the way that, if they turn over in a car or they're rolling around, the room is rotating, and you have that whole fight sequence in the rotating room. Really awesome stuff there. You have, of course, the very complicated, this is where I'm going to get into the complicated stuff, the dream within a dream within a dream stuff. That's where it loses me. That's where I feel at arm's length from the movie, because I can't wrap my mind around that many layers of okay, they're inside of this dream, but really they're in this location, dreaming while they're in that location, while they're in this location, in this car, this whole time, and it just kind of really fucks me up. It really takes me out of it. Nothing against the movie itself, it's just, for me personally, I just cannot balance that many layers in this movie. It's just a me thing, really. Outside of that, the ending is brilliant with Leonardo DiCaprio's character. We don't know if he made it out or if this is just where he's gonna stay for now. And I found all the stuff with his wife to be really fascinating. The way that she keeps popping up in the middle of these heists, trying to screw it up for him as he's just trying to get away from it. He's trying to leave this in the past, but it keeps coming back to him, and he just, in the end, he kind of gives in. And he's just like, no, I'm done with this. But is he? Is he out? Is he really done? We don't know, and I love that. Usually I don't love ambiguity. I really don't like that most of the time, but this is an example of a movie that does it really well, and it's a mind-bending movie, like I said, one that will definitely work and be a lot higher than a lot of people, for a lot of people, but for me, it's just a little bit too much. At number 8 is Insomnia. Now, this movie originally was quite a little bit lower on the list. It was around, the Prestige area. I think it was one above the Prestige. But with more thought, I really appreciate what this movie is. Because if you stack it up against Nolan's other films, it can seem a tad bit forgettable because it is the most straightforward of the bunch. There is no nonlinear storytelling. There is no big mind-bending, earth-shattering twists or anything like that. It is just a cop and a killer and the cat-and-mouse chase between them as one is trying to blackmail the other. You have, of course, Al Pacino, one of the greatest actors of our time, and then another greatest actor of our time, the late Robin Williams. You have, of course, Hilary Swank, and they all do great jobs in this movie. The movie is taking place in Alaska, and the setting is really brilliant because there is just constant sunlight, which mirrors the inability for Pacino's character to sleep because he shoots his partner in the beginning of the movie, and by the end of it, he's not even sure if it was an accident or not because this guy was going to turn on him to internal affairs because of something that happened in their past with another case. And Pacino is hell-bent on finding Robin Williams' character who murdered this girl and also witnessed him murder his own partner. So he's like, I got blackmail on you. And Pacino's like, well, we need to help each other out. I'll keep you out of trouble, you keep me out of trouble. And throughout the movie, I found it to be really fascinating that the character of Detective Dormer, he doesn't want to be caught. He doesn't want to be found out for what he did. But also at the same time, he has just a tremendous amount of guilt to him, where whenever Hilary Swank comes to him about the case, starts questioning things, starts presenting her report or evidence or anything like that, he doesn't just shoo her away. He doesn't just say, oh yeah, this is perfect, case closed. He keeps pursuing her, he keeps telling her to pursue the case, look over her evidence, study it more, and that's what ultimately leads to our climax of the movie, where she realizes what's really happening. And I just found that character to be really fascinating. It's a movie that, with time, I thought more about it, and I'm like, you know what, this is a really underrated movie in his library, and it's one that I will probably go back and watch, because I do, I don't get normally drawn to crime thrillers a whole lot, but when it has a great cast, when it has a lot of moral ambiguity to it, like this one, I found it to be a really fascinating movie, and the ending was perfect. I was worried they were going to cheat, they were going to do something weird in the ending where things were going to work out a little bit too well for our characters, but no, it actually ended perfectly. So check it out, Insomnia, if you haven't seen that yet. Coming in at number 7 is Dunkirk. People will have this either higher or lower. I don't know. This seems to be one of the more mid-tier Nolan movies. Not like mid-tier in terms of like 5, 6 out of 10. I mean like in terms of their middle ranking. People are like, I love Dunkirk, or I don't like it that much, or I do kind of like it, just not enough to put it in the top 5 or the bottom 5. So it's kind of in the middle there for me as well. Dunkirk is an excellent movie. It is a brutal war film without being like too brutal. It doesn't really go into like the gnarliness of battle or anything like that. It's something about these guys trying to get home. They're stuck on this beach. There's planes flying overhead trying to shoot at them. The opening sequence with the guys trying to get the gurney onto the boat. Really intense stuff there. The characters themselves, they do lack development. They do lack anything worth remembering about them. The only thing I really commit to memory about them is who they're played by. You know, like you have Harry Styles, you have, he's not a soldier, but Barry Keoghan's in this movie as well. Just the characters in general kind of lack some development, so the script area, not really the best that Nolan's ever done, but in terms of the story structure, it is really awesome, because you have this method that he uses where he starts building out one story, and then as that story is moving, is like, hinting towards another story, that story begins, and then once that story hits its peak and you start realizing there's another story, then that story starts. So I forget what he calls it, but it's a music term. It's when one note continues and then another one, it's kind of like they are leading into each other as the other one starts, and I really enjoyed that. I like the way that he balanced that together. The 3 storylines I found to be really awesome. You have, of course, the guys on the beach and the guys just trying to get home. You have Tom Hardy and the guys in the air, and you have Barry Keoghan and these other guys on a boat in the water. They find Cillian Murphy, and he's shell-shocked. That was a really cool performance from him. The movie plays with time in an interesting way, where, like, with Cillian Murphy's character earlier in the movie, when they find him, he is completely fucking, scared out of his mind. And then later in the movie, we kind of see where he was before then, how cocky he was, how arrogant he was, and how he can get broken by war that quickly. So that was really cool. The movie, of course, visually looks awesome. The cinematography is outstanding. The score is good. It kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. And yeah, it's definitely one that you want to watch in one sitting. You don't want to pause it, because you want to just be along for the ride the entire time, and you're going to be glued to your seat. So yeah, that one is a great film. Number 6 is Memento. Now, this movie is a fascinating one as well, because the story isn't really told the way that you think it's going to be told, where the movie starts with our main character presumably killing the man that killed his wife. And throughout the rest of the movie, we go back, we start basically at the end of the film, and we just go back further and further and further and further to find out what led us there. So it's like each segment is like a reverse cliffhanger, where a segment will start off with him running, and then the next, and you're like, wait, what's happening? What is he running from? And then the next segment after that will start off with him getting in the car and going somewhere, and then will lead to the reason why he was being chased in that previous segment. So it's another movie where you can't really take your eyes off of it. If you take your eyes off of it, if you're not paying attention enough, you will miss out, and you will be confused, and you're gonna just miss out on the experience. Yeah. Guy Pearce is excellent in the movie. They make you care about him and his mission, even though when you get to the end of the movie, you realize just how fucked up you are for rooting for him, but you had no knowledge of why we were rooting for him this entire time. We thought it was to kill his wife's murderer, but instead there's a whole other twist on top of it that completely recontextualizes the entire movie, where I bet if you go back, you'll probably pick up on these little intricacies of his character, the way that he's behaving, where you're like, okay, we could have maybe saw something coming here. But no, like, the first time you watch it, you really don't expect anything coming at the end. You think that it's gonna, just start off at the start of his mission, but no, it wraps around, it does a really good job at all of that, and it's a movie that is probably the best example of putting the audience in the shoes of the lead character that has this illness where he can't remember things, he has to write it down on pictures, and that is what we're going through, because if you can't remember the way that we started the movie, you're going to be confused throughout the movie. We start off at the end of the movie and we get further and further and further and further and further away from it. So you might have to struggle and realize, like, okay, we might be at, like, one section towards the end of the movie and then realize, oh yeah, that's right, this does lead to that happening here. So it's just a really fascinating first watch experience. I don't know how it's going to hold up on second watch, but I have a feeling it's going to be a really iconic movie, even on second watch. For me, I know it's an iconic movie for many others, and yeah, excellent. Getting into the top 5 is Oppenheimer. This is one half of the Barbenheimer duo that you did not want to miss back in summer of 2023. It's a movie that really proves the power of Christopher Nolan, because it is a 3-hour-long film about quantum physics and Senate hearings, and, it's not exactly something that screams, let's run out to the box office, let's run out to the theater and go see this movie. But because it's Christopher Nolan, because he pulls in the top tier actors like RDJ, Emily Blunt, Cillian Murphy, and he pulls excellent performances out of all three of them, as well as, plenty of the other characters in the movie. People just clamored for the movie. They just wanted to see what this was going to be, and man, the people that walked out of Barbie and walked into this walked from a comedy to a horror film, because the horrifying aspects of this movie are so fascinating to me, because Oppenheimer makes the bomb, he tests it, they're thrilled about that, and then immediately he realizes the thing that he has just done to the world. He feels like instead of making it a safer place by ending the war, he has now opened up the possibility for other people to get advantage, to take advantage of his invention, use it for destruction for years and years and years to come, and the possibility of him destroying the world with this is earth-shattering to him. And I love that Oppenheimer is such a multi-layered guy. You can't put him in one box. You can't, confine him to one characteristic. He is brilliant, but at the same time extremely reckless in the way that he approaches making this bomb. He is totally aware that there is a possibility that he will destroy the entire world with this thing if they set it off, but he goes through with it anyway just to see what the fuck happens, because he is that driven to get this done. He is, quite, like I said, intelligent, but he also is foolish with his trust, the trust that he places in certain people, in certain groups, and that kind of comes back to bite him in the third act. And he is a womanizer. He is a guy that is very calculated in the way that he moves, and just kind of moves very loosely through the different political parties that, gets him in trouble. And he is a guy that is just truly fascinating through and through. I found him to be just really excellent. Cillian Murphy gives the performance of his career, totally Oscar-deserved win there. Oh my god, dude. Emily Blunt, RDJ, another Oscar winner there. Matt Damon's in this movie, Jack Quaid, Rami Malek, Roderick is in this from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's got so much going for it, and it's a visual spectacle. The ending where he goes to Einstein and says, "Do you remember when I came to you with those calculations and said that we could destroy the world?" "Yes, I remember it well. I believe we did." And those lines, that dialogue exchange has stuck with me for many, many years, since 3 years since it came out. But yeah, that is definitely one of the all-timer endings of Nolan's filmography. Definitely one of his best. And it's a biopic that people need to come back to time and time again, because it's just so interesting. At number 4 is Batman Begins. This is definitely one of the best origin story films for a superhero I've ever seen. It's definitely probably my favorite origin story for a DC character that I've seen for sure. The character of Batman is one that at this time when this movie came out, years before that, it was getting dogged on that like we'll never get another Batman movie because of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I personally like those movies. I don't give a shit. They're guilty pleasures. But this movie was such a gamble, and here comes Christopher Nolan after, presumably almost directing Troy. Things got moved around and that didn't happen, but here comes Batman falling into his lap, and he delivered the beginning of one of the greatest trilogies of all fucking time with this movie. Batman Begins, of course, with Christian Bale, Liam Neeson, Cillian Murphy. I mean, that right there should sell you on this movie alone. 3 awesome actors playing 3 iconic characters. You've got, of course, Michael Caine as Alfred, one of the best, if not one of my favorite, Nolan characters for sure. He's just so lovable. I just care about him so much. And the villains, dude. Cillian Murphy is terrifying as Scarecrow. The horror elements of that movie. This and a lot of the stuff that we'll talk about when I talk about The Odyssey is why Nolan needs to do a horror film, for sure. Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul is so good. It is definitely one of my favorite, if not the best, Liam Neeson performance that he's ever done. Like, he is fucking eating it up in this movie. And the shift in Bruce's story from wanting to kill the man that killed his parents, taking revenge, to training under Ra's al Ghul, learning these different ways of how to fight people off and, get vengeance and stuff like that. And then when it's comes time for the final test, they're like, you need to kill this man. And he's like, no, I will not. And, betrays everything that they have built for him. And he leaves that all in the past to start his own way of getting vengeance through becoming Batman. All of that is awesome. He doesn't put on the suit until about 50 minutes in, and I was still captivated the entire 50 minutes before he puts on the suit. Then when he puts on the suit, it's just fucking 10 out of 10 territory. From there, you have Gary Oldman killing it as Commissioner Gordon, definitely one of the best Commissioner Gordons that we ever had. And then of course the fight sequence where he lets Ra's al Ghul die. He's like, "You won't kill me." He's like, "Yes, but I also cannot save you," or whatever, whatever he says. Awesome stuff there. Great start to this trilogy, and one of the best origin story films for sure. At number 3 is Interstellar. People will have this at their number 1, number 2. It's at number 3 for me right now. I love Interstellar. The movie, like Oppenheimer, like a lot of Nolan's films, is a visual feast. It is stunning to look at. Definitely one of the best space movies that I've ever seen. Probably the best movie, actually, that is set in space. Visually, the colors are striking. The cinematography, the effects, all of it look flawless. The performances from Matthew McConaughey acting his ass off. You have Anne Hathaway, Matt Damon shows up, and then of course the 2 actors for the older kids with Jessica Chastain and Casey Affleck both giving a lot of stuff for Matthew McConaughey to chew on in that scene. Probably one of the saddest scenes I've ever seen in a film is when he sees those videos. And then as well, when we get into the back half of the movie where he's banging at the bookshelf telling his daughter, begging him, screaming at him, not to leave her. It's just a really devastating movie because it's all about sacrifice. It could be as easy as just being about this journey where they are trying to sacrifice themselves to complete this, but instead, he views it less as a sacrifice of himself, but more of a sacrifice of the time with his kids, when he realizes how much time has passed, how much time he has lost with those kids, and seeing those kids say, like, you're never coming back, you left us to die, you gave up on us, he's never coming back. That is some really heartbreaking stuff. It really, really is. And it's an intense movie. The docking sequence is probably one of the most intense sequences in any Nolan film. And, yeah, like I said, the cast is outstanding. Man, I'm running out of things to say because it's just so fucking excellent. I mean, what can I say about these movies that no one else has said? Everyone loves, like, a lot, like 90% of Nolan's films. Like, It's so good. So, Interstellar comes in at number 3. At number 2 is The Odyssey. Yes, The Odyssey is this high. Is some of it recency bias? Possibly. But I am itching to rewatch this movie, and when I do, we're going to see if it stays in this slot or goes up. I didn't say down. I said up. Because The Odyssey, I don't know what it is. If it's just the fact that I hadn't seen a lot of these films and I just recently watched them, or that I had just been so hyped for this movie for a year now. But The Odyssey is just, it just feels like the movie that I have been waiting for a long time. It feels like a movie that has been built up for years and years, despite us not knowing about it until, like, what, the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025, something like that? So it's a movie that we've only known about for, like, a year. And Nolan, brings out this insane cast with Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, John Leguizamo, Lupita Nyong'o, Charlize Theron, Zendaya, tons of names that are all giving outstanding performances, big or small parts, whether it's 5 minutes or 120 minutes, they all give fantastic performances. The 3-hour-long runtime did not bother me at all. It's actually it's like 2 hours and 50 minutes, so like excluding credits, probably you're looking at like 2 hours and 45, something like that. It flew by for me because I was so invested in this story of Odysseus leading his men through hell. Not like literally and figuratively through hell. As they're going to these different islands, you have the Cyclops, you have these giant soldiers, you have the witch sequence with Samantha Morton that, like I said, proves that Nolan needs to do more horror. You have the weather fighting against them, monsters, big threats everywhere they go, and Matt Damon is hell-bent on trying to get these men home, and you realize that he's just not going to be able to accomplish that. He gives probably his best performance. This is the best I have ever seen Matt Damon. He is fucking on fire. Anne Hathaway deserves an Oscar nomination. Tom Holland is really impressive in the movie. The score by Ludwig Göransson is outstanding. It's visually insane, the way that they capture the weather sequences, being out on actual practical boats, the Cyclops puppet. There are just so many different aspects to the filmmaking, the acting, and the story that come together to make it one of my absolute favorite movies that I have seen from Christopher Nolan, and my favorite movie of this year so far. So, if you haven't seen The Odyssey, you need to see it. See it on the biggest screen possible, with the best sound. It is going to be worth the wait. Don't let the online controversies fool you, or make you have any less hype for it. It's all bullshit. The things that they are getting pissy about hardly affects the overall grander view and the scope of the movie. So that's my piece on The Odyssey. You guys can judge however high I have it, if it's crazy to put it this high, if I'm in the right, if you agree with me, tell me that. But man, let me tell you, The Odyssey is quickly approaching to be my favorite film. But number 1, my favorite film on this list currently is The Dark Knight. And to say that The Odyssey might take over the spot may say to you, oh, you don't have a lot of love for The Dark Knight then. I really, really do. The Dark Knight is a masterpiece of a movie. It fucking is. Heath Ledger comes out here as the Joker, blows people's fucking minds back in 2008. Blows their minds. Wins an Oscar. Unfortunately, he wasn't today if he was still here. I really think that. And a lot of people, obviously they praise Heath Ledger the most in this movie, but I want to give credit also to Aaron Eckhart as Two-Face, as Harvey Dent. He is amazing in this movie. The hospital sequence when he's face to face with the Joker, the ending where he's trying to kill Gordon's family. It's all super emotional stuff because he ultimately becomes the thing that he was trying to fight. Two-Face doesn't end up feeling like a villain. He feels like a tragedy. It's a tragic story unfolding, not a villain origin. That's how deep it feels. ranking. Tell me what you guys, tell me what your ranking would be of the Nolan films down in the comments below. I'm interested to see how you guys have these ranked, how you have the Odyssey ranked, especially. And give me shit. Tell me how wrong I am about the Odyssey. Bring it on. But look, that's going to be it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Take care, and goodbye.